Hey YouTube. Hey, it's John. I just got gas. The last couple of videos, I think, I ended up like having the fuel light come on during the video, so I thought I'd get gas beforehand this time and have a full tank of gas. So I'm coming through a small town here in Missouri, and I'm gonna go get some lunch. It's about 20 after 12. It's about lunchtime, right? So getting gas made me think that a great topic for a video would be fuel. That's a topic that's on the minds of some folks who own motorcycles. And by the way, yes, I know, I don't have my gloves on. I don't know where they are. I don't know what happened to them. I don't know if a dog carried them off or a cat carried them off or what, but I couldn't find them. So I'm riding without them. So go ahead and make your comment. Hello, Mr. Highway Patrol. Hello, weird motorcycle. Anyway, so fuel's an interesting topic for a lot of folks. Nice turn signal. A lot of folks want to talk about the kind of fuel they put in their bikes. There's topics like ethanol and octane. There's a lot of debate over what the best fuel or the right fuel is for the motorcycle. There's debate over whether higher octane fuels make any sense, whether they save any money, that kind of thing. Or not save any money, or whether they're good for the engine. And I thought I'd give you my kind of expert, not really expert opinion. I've read some stuff on the internet opinion. How's that? Which means exactly jack squat, but you're going to listen to it anyway because you're here. So here you go. So I just got gas, and my bike has a minimum of 91 octane. Now, one thing I will just kind of open you up with is that I do not think you should run less than the manufacturer's recommendation for octane. Some folks will give advice that you should use the lowest octane that doesn't cause your engine to ping. Well, we know that, and if you don't know, I'll tell you right now, that the main reason for octane, for higher octane fuels, is to prevent detonation, to prevent issues from the heat and compression within the engine from causing the fuel to ignite other than when it's supposed to ignite, other than when the spark tells it to ignite. So higher octane fuels resist this. They resist this because they don't burn as readily and as easily or as quickly as lower octane fuels. There's a myth that higher octane fuels are cleaner or that they have more energy or more power, and both of those myths are untrue. That's why they're called myths. Higher octane fuels on their own do not burn cleaner. They are not cleaner for your engine. They don't clean your engine. And higher octane fuels do not give your engine more power. Now here's the quick asterisk that goes after that. Ooh, looks like we got some wind. Here's the asterisk that goes after that. Cars. I'm not aware of any motorcycles that have this feature. Perhaps some high-end sport bikes. Cars, modern cars, especially built in the last few years, will typically have a sensor called an anti-knock sensor. That anti-knock sensor will automatically adjust ignition timing, air or fuel mixture. Sometimes it'll even adjust cam chain timing. My car will, for example, because it has variable valve timing. It'll adjust those timings and things like that so that the engine creates as much power as it possibly can with the fuel that it's actually running. Which means a car like my car, my Ford Focus, can run just fine on 87 octane fuel, but if you put 93 in it, you'll actually develop more horsepower. Now, on a motorcycle, that's not necessarily the same because the motorcycle doesn't adjust itself for higher octane fuel. Now, if you have, like a fuel processor with an ignition feature built in, and you're able to give it a more aggressive tune, you can take advantage of higher octane fuels. That's why I suggest going with at least the minimum so you don't get the knocking and pinging, but not necessarily thinking that you have to always run the maximum octane for the best performance. Just run at least what your manufacturer recommends. My manufacturer recommends at least 91, so I either run 91 or 93. Typically speaking, gas stations will charge the same for 91 or 93. They'll just only have one of the two, 91 or 93. So, keeping that in mind, you're not necessarily going to get a boost in power, not a meaningful one, from running higher octane fuel, and on its face it's not going to run cleaner. Now, some manufacturers, some gas stations will mix in additives into their premium fuel, additives that clean the engine and do other good things. So if their premium fuel is marketed as having additional additives, it may be worth it to you. Another myth is that having too high of an octane is actually bad, that it will cause carbon to build up or cause other problems. I'm not an expert, I'm not a chemist, I'm not an engineer, but I can't find any real evidence to suggest that. I can't find any reason why that would work. I guess it's possible, but higher octane fuel doesn't burn markedly slower. It resists ignition, but it doesn't really create a condition that would cause more carbon buildup. So In my opinion, and this is just my opinion, but in my opinion, you should never go below what the manufacturer recommends, and you can't hurt anything by going too high. You might waste money. I mean, you can hurt your wallet. You could be wasting money. If your bike calls for 87 and you're always running 93 because you think that's the best for the bike, you're probably wasting money. I mean, we put 87 in the wife's Honda because there's no reason to spend the extra when the Honda, the Shadow, doesn't call for anything more. Now, when we get gas together, usually I'll just pump in one and pump in the next. You know, we park right behind each other. And, you know, in that case, she'll run 93 because that's what I run in mine. And, again, it doesn't hurt anything. And there's no reason to put the pump up and start all over to put a different octane on her bike. You know, when you're putting 2 or 3 gallons in, yes, you're wasting money, but you're not wasting that much money. So, that's kind of my opinion on that. But anyway, back to the pinging thing. People say, well, as long as you're not getting any pinging, you're running the right octane. The problem with that is pinging isn't always audible, especially over pipes and in wind noise and engine noise. And sometimes it's not even audible in a audible.com. Yeah, right. It's not always audible in an engine that's quiet. So that's why you need to run the manufacturer's minimum recommendation, because the manufacturer has set that recommendation based on every condition your bike is going to endure. That means that you might not actually get pinging with a lower octane most of the time. But on a hot day or up a steep hill, something like that, you might create conditions where there's pinging. Now, another myth is that octane, there's some sort of slide or chart that says octane correlates with compression. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Both the Kawasaki Vulcan 1700 and the Kawasaki Vulcan 900 have the exact same compression ratio. The 900's manufacturer recommendation is 87. The 1700's manufacturer recommendation is 91. Now, why is that? Well, there's more than just compression. Now, back in the day, back in the 60s, where a lot of this automotive wisdom comes from, back in the 1960s, all engines were basically the same. They ran a carburetor, they had a camshaft in the middle of the engine that pushed push rods up and down, and it had 8 cylinders, and those push rods pushed on valves. So compression is how you got more power, displacement's how you got more power, so more displacement, more compression, more power, and you had to run ethyl. You had to run fuel with at the time, they called it ethyl because that was the additive added to make the octane rating higher. So you had to run fuel with octane additives to prevent detonation, to prevent pre-ignition and those other conditions. Today's cars are entirely different with electronic ignition, fuel injection, and all sorts of other technologies. High compression, like my car, runs 12.5 to 1 compression. That's astronomical. And then to run on 87 all day long because it can adjust itself to run on 87. This bike is less than 10 to 1, and yet it needs premium. Probably because of heat. The 1700 does run kind of hot at low speeds, and even though it's liquid cooled, you can only fit so big of a radiator on a motorcycle, and so heat builds up. And because of that heat, likely the higher octane is necessary, because as the engine heats up, it becomes more susceptible to pinging and knocking. And there's stroke length of stroke and cylinder volume. There's a lot of things that have to do with why you might need higher octane fuel than just compression. Compression doesn't tell the whole story anymore, neither does displacement. A lot of you guys ride sport bikes, and you know that my 1700 Vulcan doesn't compare to even to a 600cc. Well, it's similar to a 600cc inline 4 sport bike engine in horsepower. It's got a lot more torque than that 600cc engine, but displacement isn't everything anymore. It just isn't anymore. So really, things have changed, and that's why we have to look at each engine independently. What does your bike recommend? Go with at least that. You don't have to go over. You probably won't get any advantages of going over. But if you have the ability to tune your bike with an aftermarket fuel processor, adjust the air fuel mixture, and adjust the ignition timing, you might be able to take advantage of higher octane fuel. But when you're traveling, you might lock yourself out. When we were on our trip in Arkansas, we ran into a lot of gas stations that only had 91 as the highest. So a 93 tune would put me in a lot of trouble. And some of them only had 87, so we had to keep going because I was, concerned pulling the trailer about having knocking and pinging, which can damage the engine. So if you travel a lot, just keep that in mind before you decide to run like a 91 or 93 tune on a bike that doesn't normally require that high. Now the next topic is ethanol. Ethanol, right? That's the scary stuff. That's the stuff that they're putting in our fuel that makes our engines blow up. Well, here's the thing. 10% ethanol is not that scary. I don't like it because it reduces performance, and I don't like anything that reduces performance. Ethanol has less energy than gasoline. It means that if you take an ounce of ethanol and you light it on fire, it's going to release a certain amount of thermal energy. Take an ounce of gasoline, light it on fire, and it's going to release more energy than the ethanol. Likewise, you compress ethanol in an engine, 10 to 1, you ignite it with a spark, it's going to produce less energy than that same amount of gasoline. That's why when you're running ethanol in your bike or your car, E10, which is what most of our pumps have in most of our areas, run that 10% ethanol, you get poorer fuel economy and poorer performance, poorer horsepower, poorer torque. I loved it down in Arkansas. I actually found places where I was able to get, ethanol-free fuel. And ignore my miles per gallon on the screen right now because I was pulling the trailer. I haven't. This has been a couple days since our trip, and I haven't ridden since because of rain. It rained the whole time. Yes, I know it's not a big deal to ride in the rain, but if I don't have a place to go, I'm not going to get out in the rain and put all my rain gear on and mess with all that. I'll just take my car. On our trip, we could have had a little bit of rain, and that would have been okay, but we ended up not. But normally I get like 40 miles per gallon, 42, according to the screen. And I was getting like 46 with the ethanol-free fuel. I mean, that was great. And it was noticeable increase in power running without ethanol. So there's definitely a good reason to run without ethanol, right? Better fuel economy, better performance. Of course, you're paying for it. And one thing I haven't figured up is the extra cost of pure gasoline, which is generally marked up over E10, because that's the whole reason for E10 is that the ethanol doesn't require a dependency on foreign oil. We don't have to buy that from Middle Eastern countries or drill it from our own soil. The ethanol is made from vegetable matter, and the ethanol is cheap. It's very cheap. My car can run on E85, for example, although it runs poorly and gets very poor gas mileage. I've only done it once just to see. My car's a flexible vehicle. E85 is super cheap. Like when it's $3 a gallon for gas, it's like $1.85 for E85. Of course, the gas mileage is so bad that it kind of negates any savings over the fuel. But, so some folks kind of look at E85 and the fact that you cannot run and should not run E85 in a non-flexible vehicle. And they apply that logic to E10, and they say, well, E10 must also be bad. It just must be a little bit less bad. And that's really not true. If you remember back in your chemistry classes in high school, you remember some of these chemical equations, and you remember that a lot of things can be drastically different with only a small change. H2O or H2O2, for example. Very similar, right? H2O is, two hydrogen atoms and an oxygen atom. H2O2 is two of each. H2O you can drink, right? My leg got twisted again. It did that on the trip too. Anyway, you can drink H2O. You can wash your bike with H2O. You can do a lot of things with H2O. H2O2, that's hydrogen peroxide. You don't want that stuff, unless you're cleaning out a cut, which it's, by the way, not super effective at. But H2O2, hydrogen peroxide, has its uses, but you definitely don't want to drink it. The old chemistry joke is Johnny was a chemist's son, but Johnny is no more, because what Johnny thought was H2O was H2SO4, and H2SO4 is sulfuric acid, which is also a clear liquid, so it can easily be mistaken for water. That's the joke. Anyway, we know that things can be a little bit different and become drastically different in their properties. Likewise, E85 is nothing like E10. E10 is perfectly safe in your vehicle. Now E15, that becomes different. But E10 is perfectly safe for your vehicle. E10 will not increase wear. It will not make your vehicle last less long. It will not harm your vehicle. It won't eat through seals. It won't eat through carburetors. It will, however, not last as long in storage. The ethanol will congeal faster and clog up fuel injectors and carburetors, things like that, if you store your bike and ride and go more than a couple of weeks without getting fresh fuel. However, again, that's not a big deal. If you can find ethanol-free fuel and you know you're going to be storing your bike or you know you're not going to be riding it for a while, get the ethanol-free fuel. If you can't, don't go anywhere. I hear of guys, throwing a gas can in the car and driving 60 miles to get ethanol-free fuel. That's such a waste of time. In both cases, whether you're using ethanol-free fuel or E10, put fuel stabilizer in your bike and you'll be just fine. The fuel stabilizer will handle the extra moisture that the ethanol draws in. It'll handle the ethanol not lasting as long, and it'll handle the gasoline. You need to store your fuel correctly. You need to be running fuel stabilizer anyway. So that's my take on it. I don't think E10 is going to hurt you. Going without the ethanol will boost performance and boost fuel economy, so that's great. And that's all I really have to say on the topic. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Give me your comments. Let me know what you think. Let me know your experiences running gas. Nobody knows their bike as well as the person who rides it and has those experiences. I do think, I have some training in psychology and some education in psychology, and I am very convinced that we can be fooled. into believing something can exist without it actually existing. I wrote a paper on this, as a matter of fact. No, I'm not going to let you have it. No, I'm not going to let you see it because I don't know where it is. It was in my undergrad. But I wrote a paper regarding motorcycles, and I actually took a poor sap in a parking lot, and without doing anything to his bike, convinced him that I improved the performance, and he was convinced that it was improved, and he felt that there was more horsepower. I won't get into that story too much, but the point of it is we can be fooled into believing something is increasing our performance without it actually doing so. In other words, we can believe that running higher octane fuel gives us more horsepower, and we can put high octane fuel in our bike, and we can ride our bike and feel more performance. I mean, we really do feel it. We really do feel the bike is faster. It isn't faster, but we feel it because our brains are really good our brains trust us, right? Or our brains trust itself, maybe. So if the brain believes that higher octane fuel makes more performance, then the brain is anticipating more performance when you put high octane fuel in your bike. And so the brain just goes ahead and gives you what you want. So I believe we can be convinced of things, but we need to be careful about understanding what the realities are, and maybe not letting ourselves fool ourselves and trying to put some empirical evidence into effect here. So anyway, I'm looking forward to your liking, commenting, subscribing. Let me know what your experiences are. Do you feel like that you really have increased performance from certain types of fuels? How about brands? A lot of people like certain brands of fuel and don't like other brands of fuel, and that's a very legitimate thing. Certain brands have different additives, just like engine oil, right? Different engine oils have different additives that help the bike run as good as it can. Some people like top tier fuels, and yeah, give me your comments below. Let me know your thoughts on fuel, what fuel you run and why. All right, guys, I'll talk to you later. As always, God bless, and I'll catch you later. Bye-bye.